Welcome to Blender VT, and this is a Blender video tutorial for the vital functions in Blender version 2.34. Let's discuss the vital functions in Blender, like loading, saving, a very quick overview on rendering, and the user preferences and themes. Blender uses the .blend file format to save nearly everything: objects, scenes, textures, and even all of your interface window settings. Some users have also been known to use this format to save material libraries, texture libraries, mesh libraries, and so on with the same format. So to load a Blender file from disk, just press F1, or you can use this main menu drop-down menu, click open, that works as well. Now the focused window then temporarily transforms into the file selection window. To load a file, just select it with the middle mouse button and then press enter, or simply click it with the middle mouse button. The upper text box shows the current directory path, and the lower one contains the selected file name. The P button, or you can also use the P button on the keyboard, moves you to the parent directory, and the button with the dash, or the dash, maintains a list of recently used paths. In the Windows operating systems, the latter also contains a list of all your current drives. Alright, now just as a warning, Blender expects that you know what you are doing. When you load a file, you are not asked to save unsaved changes to the scene you were previously working on. Completing this file dialog is regarded as being enough confirmation that you don't do this by accident. So make sure that you do save your files. Alright, so let's load a file. You just click on it, you can press enter or use the middle mouse button, or I can just use the middle mouse button, skip both those steps, and it'll take a moment for it to load because I'm capturing at the same time. You'll also notice that rendering is going to take an awful long time too. That's how you do this. There we go. There's one of my Blender projects. Saving files is like loading files. When you press F2, or again, you can just use the File menu, Save As. The focused window temporarily changes into a file selection window. Click the lower edit box to enter in a file name that you want. And if it doesn't end with .blend, don't worry, it will put that in there automatically. So let's say, let's change this to that. Okay, and then you just press enter and it will write the file. After you've pressed enter to finish your input keyboard. Okay, there we go. Alright, now if a file had the same name as that one, then you will be asked to confirm that you want to save the file at the overwrite prompt. Alright, now when we go back to the save dialog, it also contains a little feature to help you to create multiple versions of your work. Pressing the plus and minus keys on the numerical keypad will increment and de-increment a number contained in the file name. To simply save over that currently selected file name, you can just press Ctrl W instead of F2 and just confirm the prompt. So if we do that, Ctrl W, confirm, there we go, we just saved over it. Alright, now let's do a very quick overview on what you will need to render an image. So just to get you started. Alright, let's click on the scene context and the rendering subcontext. Okay, now we have a whole lot of options. We're not going to worry about these, we're just going to worry about these ones right here in the format panel. You'll see the size. You can set the size using these size buttons, and you can also set the pixel aspect ratio by using these buttons here. Okay, clicking on the selection dialog box brings up a menu with all available output formats for images and animations. For still images, we might choose JPEG, for example, or my favorite right now is PNG because it's lossless. Okay, now that the settings are done, the scene can be rendered by hitting the render button or by pressing F12. And I find just pressing F12 that's better because you can do it anywhere without having to switch to this context and subcontext in the buttons window. All right, now depending on how complex or what your settings we're using, this can take anywhere to a few seconds to a few minutes. And since I am capturing at the same time, this will take about 10 times as long. Like by now it would have been done. So, but no, I'm capturing it at the same time. All right. So anyway, if you don't see anything, just make sure that your scene is constructed properly. Make sure you have lighting, the camera is positioned correctly, and that all the layers that you want to render are on. And also you see when you press the render button, this window pops up. The Blender render window pops up to let you know of the progress. And this is done per frame. So if you're doing an animation, this will only show you the status of the current frame. And that 92 around my cursor lets me know the current frame that I'm on. Okay, so it disappeared, now it's done. Now if you want to save the current frame, because when you render a single frame, it doesn't save it automatically. You have to decide, okay, this is the picture that I want, and then you can save it. If you press F3, then it will bring up the save window, and you'll notice that since this is the last window that I had in focus, it replaces here. So I can just press escape, and don't worry, the image is not lost. It is actually behind this one. Like one thing you'll notice with Blender is that it has 3 windows open. Well, 2 at the start, 3 when you have a Blender render going. And then you can't see this, but I'm gonna go down to my taskbar, click on that window, and oh, there, it's still there. So as long as I press F3 with that open, I can save it. So let's say, oh, that's actually a good name, because I just did this a few minutes ago. Okay, I'm just gonna save this as a PNG. Save over it, yeah, I sure do. And it will now save that file. It will save that image to that file. Now, Blender has some options that are not saved with the current Blender file, but which do apply to all of a user's files instead. These preferences primarily concern user interface handling detail, system properties like mouse, fonts, and languages. And since these preferences and themes are hardly used, they are hidden above the main menu. You can reveal them by clicking and dragging the window border, moving that down, and now you can, we can see them now. Okay. Okay, now you notice that there are 7 categories. Because most of these are self-explanatory, or you can display a helpful tooltip if you hold the mouse still over them, we won't describe these in detail, but we'll look at a few helpful ones and go over each category. Okay, the first category you'll see on the far left is the View and Controls. Okay, these settings concern how the user interface should react to user input, such as which method of rotation should be used in 3D views, for example, which can be switched. Where is that? Oh, it's right here. So you can switch it between trackball or turntable. Trackball is better. Now there is an option that will allow you to swap what the left and right mouse buttons do, so that the left mouse button selects instead of the right mouse button, which is more conventional for Windows programs. Now, before you get all excited and switch to that immediately, I recommend that you go through the beginning tutorials first. After you've given it a chance, then you should decide on what you like better. The main reason why I say this is because throughout the beginning tutorials, I'll be constantly referring to right mouse to select, left mouse to confirm, so that way you can get it engraved in your minds. And if you change that now, you're going to get really confused. Later on, I'll be assuming that you already know what button does what, and I'll just say select this object, and I'll usually just leave it at that. Alright, and here you can also activate 3-button mouse emulation. If you have a 2-button mouse, the middle mouse button can then be input as Alt left mouse. Alright, some other neat features here is the ability for you to change how zoom works. You can switch it to dolly so that the zoom is based on vertical movement on the mouse instead of continuing the zoom, which is how most other 3D programs work. So instead of, if you hold down Control and the middle mouse drag, you can see as you move it in or out, when I stop moving the mouse, the zooming also stops. So that's a really nice feature that they added. Oh, you can see the insides. So I like that better just because I feel it gives me more control. And some of you will be more used to that. So I guess I do recommend that option, actually. All right, and then you have edit modes. Edit modes lets you specify the details the workings of certain editing commands like duplicate. Auto keyframe is convenient right here in that you don't have to press the hotkey to insert a keyframe. It's done automatically. However, it could make a mess of things if you're constantly changing frames and then moving objects around to see if you get a better placement for them. And then you come to find out that those objects are suddenly animated. So if you find it is more convenient to do it that way, then I would suggest change that. But for right now, especially at this stage, I would recommend you leave that off because it'll prevent you from doing unexpected things because it won't make keyframes automatically for you. Next, you have language and font. Here you can select an alternative TrueType font for display in the interface and choose from available interface languages. So if I click on that, you'll see that it will select a sans serif font that I have on my hard drive, or one that I previously have selected, and it will use that one instead. And also one thing you'll notice is that it actually now anti-aliases the font, so which could be nice or could be bad, depending on what you want. And then if you click on this, it will bring up the load dialog window, and you can load a font from your computer. You can also change the font size, and here you can change the language of certain interface tooltips, buttons, toolbox, things like that. Okay, next you have themes. Here you can define themes with custom interface colors, and you can create and manage all your themes from here. So to show you a little bit of this, let's go to rounded. You see the colors are slightly different, but the main thing is that the buttons are now round. So if you like it that way, you can change that. And here you can change the name of the currently selected theme. You can add a new one, like if I say add new user theme, I'm going to change it to my theme. And now we have a new theme that we can access. And here you can also change the background colors. In order to also navigate around, here's categories for different interface colors. You can click on one, then here's some colors that you can change. And there you go. Then you have copy paste. The color picker works here as well. All right, let's revert back to the default and turn that font off. There we go. Okay, autosave. Autosaves can be set so that you will have an emergency backup in case something goes terribly wrong. These files are named filename.blend1. And filename is the current name of your project, by the way. So it'll just add .blend1 for the extension, or .blend2, .blend3, etc., etc. And you can change how many versions you want by clicking on this button here. You can also change how frequently it will save, and you can even open your most recent one if you want to. And then you have System and OpenGL. You should consult this section if you experience problems with graphics or sound output, or if you don't have a numerical keypad and want to emulate it for laptops, like right here. Okay, furthermore, here you can set the lighting scheme for solid and shaded draw modes. And to really illustrate this, I'm going to go ahead and delete this mesh, and I'm going to add the monkey. Where is the monkey? There he is. Okay, so here we have our monkey, and whilst I smooth him out, and now you can see that he's only shaded with one color, and it's dead on with the camera. And some parts of it are completely in shadow. And sometimes that's good, but sometimes you might just want more detail. So if you can see right here, light 1 is the one that we currently have on, and we can't turn it off because we have to have at least one light. If we turn on light, click on light 2 and then turn it on, you can see OpenGL now added a blue light. And if we go to light 3 and then we turn that one on, now we have a 3-point lighting system so that we can have a better illuminated object. And these panels will allow you to change the direction of the color, the specular components of it, things like that. Alright, now then you have at the end file paths. Here you can choose the default paths for various file and load dialogues. This is really helpful, especially for a data organization freak like me. If you want to load a texture, you can set your default directory to be here for the texture, so that will take you there immediately. And that's good, especially if you want to keep well organized and you want to save yourself a lot of time. Alright, now setting the default Blender scene. If you don't like Blender's default window setup, or you want specific render settings for each project you start, or you want to save your theme, that's no problem. You can use any scene file as a default when Blender starts up. Like this one, for example. This file that I have open right here, I can make this my default when Blender starts up if I wanted to. In order to do that, you just press Ctrl-U, and then it'll take your current scene, and then it will save that as .b.blend in your home directory. Now you can clear the working project and revert to the default scene anytime by pressing Ctrl-X or by using the silly main menu. And then I'll ask you, do you want to erase it all? And just remember to save your changes to the previous scene first. So there we go. We're now set to the default. So that does it for the interface. Next, we're going to start talking about object mode and how you can actually start modeling. And then after that, we're going to start getting to some really fun stuff. So stay tuned.